Welcome to the Not Just a Pony Ride podcast, presented to you by Hetra University. If you've landed here, you're probably passionate about how horses help people. Whether you're an instructor, therapist, in the business, or have experienced equine assisted services yourself, we're glad you're here. Join us as we talk about the benefits, the science, to-dos, how-tos, and all of the reasons why what we do is so much more than just a pony ride. And now, from the Hetra campus in Gretna, Nebraska, here's your host, occupational therapist Katie King.
Hey, and welcome back. Today I have a highly requested episode. It is about how Hetra funds our mission. How do we make the money to do what we do and make the impact that we do? So I have Edie Godden, our CEO, and I have Angie Connell, our development director here at Hetra. And together they are going to tell us about all of the differences between the different types of funding that we have. That's campaigns, events, private donors, sponsorships, grants. We're going to go through each one of those umbrellas, if you will, discuss the differences, why you might do one versus the other, and how they all go together to really create a successful foundation for your program. You're also going to hear us talk about a very special campaign that's about to kick off. That's Drive to Ride. And if you keep listening after this podcast, you're going to hear a participant impact story. And those stories are shared from our families who are enrolled in our Drive to Ride campaign. That's going to go from October 1 through the end of this year. So you're going to be hearing spotlights on those families. I really encourage you guys to listen to them. They're not intended at all to be advertisements for fundraising. They really, truly are just families that want to share their story and why horses have made such a difference in their lives. So keep listening if you want to hear some of those stories and get your feel goods in for today. Without further ado, I'm going to give you this episode. If you have any questions or if you're interested in some consulting in this area, I'm going to put some information in the show notes below for that as well. And enjoy. Welcome to the podcast, guys. So today we are going to talk about how Hetra supports our mission through different ways and different types of events and campaigns and other ways to fund. So Edie, why don't you start and tell us a little bit about you?
Sure. I'm Edie Godden, and I am the CEO here at Hetra. I have been at Hetra for over 30 years. So I've really seen the organization grow from being an all-volunteer organization where we had just one or two individuals we were serving to the organization we are today, which is serving over 150 people a week with a lot of other programs that we offer. So I've been a part of all ranges of the program.
Yes, and we are busy. Angie, what about you?
So I have been here since February 1st, I guess I should say. I'm the development director here at Hetra. However, I do come from a background of events and fundraising from over 20 years.
Excellent. So you're the development director.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about your position and what you're responsible for here at Hetra.
So my position entails pretty much being involved with all events and campaigns, as well as working with our development team, making sure that the grants are entered in on time and that we're building relationships with our sponsors and letting the sponsors know how grateful we are for them.
And you have a little team of people that work with you in the development committee sector of our branch. So tell us about who helps you and what they do as well.
Yep. So we have two development specialists. One of our development specialists, Lucy, really concentrates on grants and then working on our Carrot Club to bring people in. As well as, just working on building relationships with those foundations that we work with. And then we have another development specialist who concentrates on campaigns as well as getting sponsorships for our events and helping with running in those events.
Excellent. So we haven't always had a development director, right, Edie?
Right. We haven't always had a development team.
Right. Tell me a little bit about that process and why we decided to bring on people that focus really just in this area.
Yes. So we early on in the organization, I believe after we hired our volunteer coordinator and we were really looking at what is the next position we want to hire for, it really was a development person because my specialty, my expertise is in the arena and with programming as an occupational therapist. That's where I'm very passionate about. Not that I don't or can't do the fundraising aspect of things, because I do, and I do enjoy that as well. But we didn't know we needed someone to be focused on that, and that needed really to be a full-time commitment. So early on, I think it was probably the fourth or fifth full-time employee we brought on was a development person. And we really saw the impact of that. So that ability to have somebody in charge of the campaigns and the events, and we were a lot more event heavy at that point. And how that really helped us to make sure we were meeting goals for those things. And then over time, we've been able to grow that department because the organization has grown. Our people we serve in the community has grown. And so that need to have a good funding stream and a really varied funding stream. So we want to make sure we never really rely on only one funding source, because that's what helps keep our program sustainable.
Absolutely. So I think the important part about definitely your position, Angie, and having that development team is that our funding sources are coming from several different areas, and that requires a lot of coordination and organization. So Angie, do you want to tell us a little bit about kind of each one of the different sections of our funding sources and how just kind of generally, and then we'll kind of get into each one and talk a little bit more.
So we definitely have our biggest funding source would be our grant program. We work very hard with many foundations as well as individual donors that have grants to get their funding from them. And we do have our Blue Jeans and Dreams, which is an excellent event that brings in a great source of income for us, as well as new individuals into our building to show what we do with that. With events, there's so many different levels to that. We have sponsorships, we have auctions, we have paddle raisers, and other different games to raise additional money. We have other campaigns where we are, running for 3 or 4 months at a time to raise that money.
Okay, perfect. So we're going to get into each one of those a little bit, because I think it's important to know the differences between each one and how they can help your center, or how, maybe one might be better than the other, depending on what your resources are and that type of thing. So Edie, do you want to kick us off with events? Let's talk about that, because we just came off of Blue Jeans and Dreams, and that is a whole nother animal that's so much fun, but a lot of work. Yeah.
Yeah. So you heard Angie talk about it. So Blue Jeans and Dreams is our big gala. It's our biggest fundraising event of the year. We had about 450 people that we brought into our barn, and we do shut down programming for a week to get the barn ready and deep clean and bring in tables, and people are really surprised, I think, at how nice it looks in there and how fancy it is for being in a barn. But they also really enjoy coming to an event that's casual, more of a casual feel to it. But yeah, it's very staff intensive and volunteer intensive. So it requires a lot of time. We have a live and silent auction as part of that. We have our paddle raiser or our mission moment, where we raise additional money. This was our best event yet. And it's super important because it brings together our community and really allows us to connect with them in person, especially coming off COVID and the year we've had where we really haven't had those personal connections. It was really a nice way to get people back in the barn, get people connected, and really be able to visit with those people that have helped to support us. So now, that being said, events are hard, and they take a lot of time, energy, and effort from our staff. And so, as I said early on, we were really heavy in events. Like, how many events can we do to make the money and that we need to make to support the mission that we do here? And pretty quickly we found, we can't do this many events because it's taking away from what we need to do from a programming standpoint. So what else can we do? And so that's when we really started to explore things like the campaigns, like the Drive to Ride campaign, or individual donors or foundations. And so those have really helped to broaden what areas that we can find funding and support the mission here. and also been able to allow the staff to really focus on the mission rather than on the fundraising event.
Right.
And I think the other thing to keep in mind with events too, depending on where you're at or what you're doing, is weather can play a huge role on your events. If you're having a golf tournament and it rains, that event is, pretty much either you have to postpone it or just hope that everyone's going to let you keep their donation for the day. So, weather can play a huge role on your events, and just things going on in the community. If there's football games going on and that kind of thing, your attendance can really depend on what's going on in the community.
Yeah, and we're in Husker country here, go Big Red, but that plays a huge role in what dates we chose and what our attendance is going to be like. And I think that plays a role, even though our sponsors definitely give to us because they support our mission. There's also a little bit of advertisement or things in it for them as well. And so I think that plays a role in those sponsorships as well, wouldn't you say, Angie?
Yeah, absolutely. People want to support our mission, but they also want people to learn about them and want people in the community to realize that they're supporting a good cause. And if they're not getting any sort of feedback from their sponsorships, they're probably going to look elsewhere. So it's really important to make sure that you are, doing what you said for your sponsors and making sure that they feel like they are an important part of your mission, and an important part of your organization.
So that's all part of events, having an event, doing the auction, having sponsors that actually, donate money to sponsor your actual event. But then we also, outside of events, we also have donors. And I would say that cultivating that relationship is similar to the way you do sponsorships, like for an event, correct? Private donors?
Yes, for sure. And private donors, it's a little bit more important about that. You need to build that relationship with them because honestly, when they're donating to you, they're truly donating to your mission and what you are about, not to what they're going to get from it. So sponsorship, they get to bring their clients, they get to bring, their employees to an event. It's a great time. But when you have a donor, they will come to events, but they're truly donating because of your mission and the relationship what they have with you and your organization. So that's very, very important to make sure that you start a great relationship with them, but then you continue to improve that throughout time and not let that drop at any point.
How would you say that HETRA continues to develop our relationships with our donors? What do we do to make sure they feel important?
We work really hard in making sure that we are thanking them at all times. We send happy anniversary cards to them from the first time they donated to make sure that they know. We send out newsletters so that they know what their money is going towards. We've done pictures from some of our kiddos that they've drawn, and then we'll make personal phone calls, visits. Both Edie and I and Aaron and the whole development team works on reaching out to them. And if we feel, that it's important to put them in contact with the family or something like that, we will do that as well.
Okay. Edie, how have you seen our, donors and sponsorships and relationships with people, change over the years, or things that we have added that you think have really helped?
I think, like Angie said, being able to really connect them back to the mission and what is important for them. So for some people, it might be the horses. They might really connect to the fact that, our horses are here in their second and third career. We have 4 or 5 horses that are over 25 and are herd and still working and doing really well. And so I think that is a really connection with people. Like, these guys are really doing a lot to make sure the horses are well cared for. So that's part of it. Maybe some people really connect with our veterans program. And so we want to make sure we're sharing information and sharing stories about the veterans program so that they really understand the impact that they're having. So, you give money to something, and we want to make sure that they understand that truly helps us make an impact. It's not just, well, thanks for your money and off we go. This is because you gave that money, another veteran was able to ride. Because you gave that money, we were able to take the miniatures out on another visit. So it really is impactful, and we want to make sure they understand that.
Yeah. And I think cultivating that relationship with your donors and finding out, like you said, what is it about, Hetra that they specifically chose to donate for us, and getting to know them, and maybe they are a horse person, so we share more horse related things with them, or, that kind of thing. And just really building that relationship on a personal level, I think, is what keeps people coming back and connecting to our mission for sure.
The other thing I like about the individual donor program, and we started this many years ago, it used to actually be called the 100 for Hetra Club. And our goal was to get 100 people to donate $100 to help support the program. And it was kind of the start of our monthly giving program. And now it's called the Carrot Club. And the funding goes to help support our horse herd. But the thing I love about it is it has the ability to donate $10 a month or $100 a month. So we really have the ability to say to a lot of different people, you can make an impact for $10 a month. Mm-hmm. And it's a nice way from an organizational standpoint also to look at a reoccurring income stream coming in as well.
Mm-hmm. So that's related kind of, if you will, under the umbrella of campaigns.
Yes.
So the Carrot Club is ongoing. It's happening all the time. Like you said, monthly donations. What all does the Carrot Club entail? Because there is a little bit of a, join the Carrot Club and do your monthly donation, but then they also kind of get perks as well. Correct, Angie?
Yes. So they will receive an awesome pin every year, which is so cute. And then they do receive a special newsletter. We are also working on doing a special event for those people. And we really just keep them really involved with what's going on with the horses. And then depending on their level, we have different signage up throughout the barn on the horse side for those different donors and sponsors. And we just really make sure that we keep them engaged and let them know what a difference they are making.
Right. So under campaigns, Carrot Club is part of that. And we have several other campaigns that we do as well. And I think it's important to kind of make the delineation between campaigns versus events, because I think that line can get a little blurry sometimes, but they are very different and help us in very different ways. Do you want to tell us a little bit about, the difference and why we do both?
Yeah. So I think campaigns are less staff and volunteer intensive typically. We may have an event within a campaign. So an example of that is our Drive to Ride program. And that's a program that we set up for our participants to raise funds. It goes back to directly benefit those participants because they can earn free sessions. And then as part of that, so mostly it's a pledge, and they tell their story. We put it up on the website, and people pledge or support them directly. But we wanted to offer some ways because some families have more difficulty getting the word out or asking for money. So we wanted to have one event in there called our walk to ride, and it's a walk or a run out here at the facility, and it allows people to get teams together to come and support their individual or their participant that's riding. So that's again where I think you see it get a little bit blurry. From a campaign standpoint, the Drive to Ride program, I would say within the next 2 to 5 years will probably be our biggest fundraiser or our biggest funding income from a fundraising standpoint. If we just look at fundraising specifically and don't look at grants and foundations, I think it will overcome Blue Jeans and Dreams eventually. But it is very staff intensive for our development department, who meets with the families and helps get the stories and get those stories up and then help continually promote those things. But it is not as staff intensive for the rest of the staff, who can then really focus on the programming aspect of things. And I think that's really important to remember. And it's important to remember to have a good balance of the two of them.
And I think the important thing about that is it is staff intensive on the development side, but that development team is learning more about our families, which is helping our development team not only truly believe our mission, but, make those families feel like they're part of our family, and then, help them be able to raise money. It's what development team wants. They want to be involved in the mission. They want to be connected to our families, because then we know we're making a difference. And that's what most development teams want. And so although it is a little bit, staff intensive, it's really what fills our heart. So it helps us keep going, which I think is really important. And I think the great thing, like we talked about, you're saying this is Edie is saying, like, this is helping our families pay for their lessons, which is amazing. But I think the cool thing about Hetra and all the different campaigns and events we do is we're not saying you donate to us and we're going to decide what we do with your money. Mm-hmm. We let people decide what's important to them. If it's the horses, if it's the veterans, if it's programming. And there's not a lot of places out there that don't just say, thank you for your donation. We're going to put it towards this. Mm-hmm. We're here. You get to decide what your money is going to make a difference. And that is huge to people. And I think that's so important.
Yeah, I really have to say I enjoy that about a lot of our campaigns and events as well, is that we have different campaigns that go to different pots, I guess, if you will, as which I think helps people focus their heart and their energy a little bit more. So we have the Drive to Ride, which helps participant scholarship and helps our participants get lessons. And it kind of goes to that programming piece. And then we also have Hottie, or Horse of the Year. Mm-hmm. And that pulls our horse people's heartstrings, right? Because that's where we race to see who can win the most money for Horse of the Year. Do you want to tell me a little bit about that, Edie?
Yeah, so that is actually a campaign that our volunteers are very helpful with. We have done it a lot of different ways over the years, but I think the last few years we've really found it's best to let the volunteers vote on our top 10 horses. And so they kind of pick who gets to be in the race. And we try not to let the same horse win every year, because that's always hard too. But so the top 10 horses the volunteers pick, and then we raise money for about a 2 to 3 month time frame. It kind of depends on where it's hitting in the year for us. Pre-COVID, we actually had penny jars out in the arena on both sides. And so the kids could bring their change and put them in there. And as an OT, I love that fine motor coordination. I would always have pennies to put in there. Now, our finance person does not love counting pennies. I will tell you that.
But whose jar did your pennies go into, Edie? Probably your horse that was in the race, right?
So that's a good point that Katie makes. So we put all of our full-time and part-time staff as captains of those horse teams. And then the volunteers help form those teams. And it gets really competitive.
It does.
It gets competitive, I'm telling you. And we do a few event things, like we might do dine out night at a local restaurant. That'll give us a certain percent back. We did an online auction this year to help support that event a little bit, because we weren't in the barn as much and we didn't have as many donations coming into the barn. But
we did a hottie shop where
we did do the hottie shop. So a lot of volunteers will make stuff. They'll bring it to the barn and they'll sell it for their team. And they'll do that on Facebook and on different online, different venues, Etsy, and some of those different places as well. And it's amazing. I think this year it brought in about $45,000 to help support the horse herd, which is huge. And it really does bring the team of volunteers together that are working towards supporting that horse, which is really cool.
This episode of the Not Just a Pony Ride podcast is sponsored in part by
Equiforce. Equiforce is a database that allows you to track every facet of your organization, from horse, donor, and volunteer management to scheduling, grant tracking, incident reports, and tracking participant progress too. This is not a one-size-fits-all setup. Instead, Equiforce personally works with you to learn how your facility functions and takes note of your specific terminology so that they can create a unique system to match the needs of your organization. And of course, Equiforce provides an ongoing training and support so that your database can grow with you. Visit them at www.equiforce.com. That's EQUI-FORCE.com.
This episode is also sponsored in part by
Wooden Horse Corporation and the Equicizer. The Equicizer is a handcrafted, non-motorized mechanical horse used by equine-assisted service programs worldwide. The Equicizer requires no electricity, tools, or maintenance and can be used indoors or out for evaluations, warm-ups, stretching, mounting, dismounting practice, and volunteer training, and build confidence with students, clients, and volunteers. It can easily carry the weight of 2 adults, offering the unique option to ride tandemly. To learn more about the Equicizer, visit equicizer.com. That's EQUICIZER.com. Yeah, I think hottie time is one of my favorite times in the barn, I think, because everyone's such a family. Like each team is like a little family, and they're like, oh, team Galaxy or team, and everybody's so, the camaraderie is all there. And I enjoy that about that. So we've touched on campaigns, Carrot Club, Hottie, Drive to Ride, events, our Blue Jeans and Dreams, sponsorships, auction, that type of stuff. Donors, so private donors. We also use or have funding through building those relationships with private donors. So kind of, I think the last piece of the pie, well, it's never the last, there's always something else, but another huge piece of the pie is grant funding, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think it's really important, as Angie had said before, to build relationships with donors, but also with foundations, because they want to know about your mission, and they want to know, again, that the dollars that they're donating to you are impactful and how they're impactful. And again, it's knowing what that foundation. So maybe, again, we're very varied in the individuals that we serve. Maybe that foundation is really strong in veterans. And so that's the program we're going to present to them, is the veteran program. And throughout the year, we're going to follow up with them with veteran stories and how are things going and what's happening in the veteran program, so that they stay connected, because they really do want to have information on how it's going and where those dollars are being spent.
I think that's something Hetra does so well. And just in the, few minutes we've been talking, I hear a lot, both of you saying, it's a lot about relationships and checking back in and sharing stories and sharing impact. And I think that that's a huge part of it, even for, like you said, foundations and our grant funders as well. Angie, what would you say are, important things or things do we look for as far as, foundations or grants and that type of thing?
I think it's really important to do your research on those foundations, making sure you're a good fit, because writing grants is time intensive. So you need to make sure that you're a good fit and you're not just applying for any grant you see. You want to be selective and make sure that you're a good fit. And sometimes that takes reaching out ahead of time, and saying, trying to get a meeting with them to kind of explain our mission and see if that's a good fit. And if for some reason you are denied that one, then following back up, what could we have done differently? And getting more information that way. But again, building those relationships, making sure they feel that they're a part of us is really important, because then they look for our application every year. They want to know that we are out there, getting better and better every year, and they want to be a part of that.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because I think grants are kind of a whole nother animal. And just so our audience knows, we are going to do a funder panel podcast. So if you are interested in more grant related type questions, we're going to do an interview with some of, foundations and funders and things, and do some Q&A. So keep looking for that. But what I was going to say is that it can be a little bit daunting to think about applying for grants, especially if maybe it's the first few that you've done. And so I think it's reassuring to know that it's okay to reach out to that funder and say, hey, I'd like to apply for this grant, but are we appropriate? Or if you have questions, and then the follow up too, like just because you're denied doesn't mean you can't reach out to ask why or that type of thing.
Yep, I agree. And, in some years, the funding is a little bit more, it's not as broad out there. And they may say, we just only could fund 5 people this year. Please apply next year. You just got to keep at it and, really look at what you can do to better your application every year. If you can include a story about one of our, participants that has made great strides, they want to see that stuff as well. So just really making sure you're keeping current and, just keep trying.
Yeah.
Go ahead. I think it's important to not let no, because no likely a lot of times means not this year, but don't give up. So we've had funders that we've applied for multiple years, and it might be year 3 or 4 that we get funded. And there's some funders that won't fund you every year. It's every other year, every 4 years, so you have to kind of figure that aspect of it out, but don't give up because you heard no. And I would say the other thing about grants is it's really important to look at exactly what they ask for and give them that. So if they tell you that they want it double spaced on this size of paper and this size font, and it can't exceed more than 3 pages, and you must include your organizational budget, your project budget, and, a brochure, you better make sure every single box is checked, because that's the first thing that they do, to toss out a grant is to say, well, this was 4 pages long. We asked for 2. This one isn't even going to get looked at. And so you really want to make sure you understand that, and that's the research part of it, understand exactly what it is they want, and you provide them exactly what they want.
Mm-hmm. And I would say too, is if you have connections, if you have a board, reach out to them and ask them, do you know somebody at this foundation? Do you have a connection here? Because a lot of times, that may be the little thing that gets you over the hump to get you funded the first year. And then it's your job to continue up that relationship. But it's okay to ask somebody if they have a connection and to introduce you to them, because that's, one way that you can, kind of get a foot up.
Yeah, absolutely. Edie, how would you say our, funding sources and our support for our mission has changed over the years? Do you think that where, we were more grant heavy, or we are now, or how do you think that as our organization has grown, has that changed at all?
It has changed. And like I said, initially, early on, we were very event heavy because that's what we knew how we could do, and we could do it, and you could bring in some money at the time. But I'd say we've definitely moved to more campaigns and more grants and foundations, and certainly still have our programming and continue to develop that in that revenue source as well, is what can we do from an organizational, what revenue streams can we bring in from there? So I think it has changed in more campaigns and more grants. We still have the fundraising events as well, and they certainly carry their own importance. But I think and I don't think it has to be an equal balance, but having a balance, like I would be afraid if I came into the year and I said 90% of our revenue this year is going to come from grants. That would be scary to me, because that's not something we have a lot of control over. We can control the application we can put in, we can control the research we do, but we can't control what that ultimate decision is. The same thing about a fundraising event, as Angie said, like if 90% of our revenue is going to come from one event and it rains that day and it's a golf event, then what? So I think being able to say, 30% or 40% is coming from here and 30 or 40%. And that way, if one area falls a little short one year, hopefully another area does do a little bit better. And then the last, I guess, little piece of advice I'd have for people is set goals for all of your events, all of your campaigns, even your grants. Like have an overall goal, like we need to bring in this much money from our grant program. Because number one, you're going to get closer if you've got the goal and you've shared that with your team. They're going to understand this is where we need to get and why. I will never forget the very first year, and this was back in the day when we asked probably our third Blue Jeans and Dreams event, and we had a small committee, and I came in and I said, okay, guys, and I think we'd made $3,000 or $4,000 off the event, in the last couple of years. And I said, we're going to make $10,000 this year. And they all looked at me like, are you, and it was like double what we had made, and they're like, are you crazy? How would we ever do that? And I said, here's the plan. Here's what's going to come from sponsorships and auction and this and that. And when you put that plan in front of them and give them some input, like they're like, yeah, I don't know that we can do that much from sponsorship, but maybe we could. Then they have a roadmap to how we're going to get there. And then that 10,000 doesn't seem so daunting. And now we bring in, I think, over 200, close to 200,000 off of the event. So it's grown a lot since then. But, you have to put that out in front of people and then have a roadmap to how we're going to get there and take their input about what's going to work and what might not work.
And that transparency with your team does a lot of things. I think for me, being a member of the team, it helps motivate me, because I know like we all need to work at this together. We're this close to our goal. We need to keep pushing. It helps motivate me, but it also makes me feel even more a part of the team. Like I am a piece of this puzzle that helps keep our mission alive. And that, sharing that number with your team, I think helps them feel that way, at least for me.
Yeah, I think it's really important too that it's not just your development team. Yeah. Like it's your whole team, because then everyone helps. And, people, just because they're not in development doesn't mean they don't have great fundraising ideas. Right. When you share it with your whole team and get everyone behind it, It's like, oh, we really need 10 more gift cards. Within 5 minutes we had it because we have a whole team that was, supportive and working behind it. And it goes the same way when we're doing these campaigns. Like we put up barometers out in the hallway. So our families and our volunteers can see, oh, we're this close to getting our goal, or this horse is leading. Do you want your horse to be leading? Really important to keep everyone informed and everyone involved, because like you said, then you have, the whole buy-in. And when people work together as a team, it makes such a huge difference.
Absolutely.
And your team, especially for smaller organizations, it doesn't have to be all staff. It can be volunteers, it can be parents, it can be community members. There are a lot of people that are going to be out there willing to help you. They just need some guidance. And so they need somebody to kind of step up and provide the guidance. But you can form a team from a lot of different places. And so don't feel like, well, I'm a team of 2 because that's all that's in my organization. How in the world would I ever put on an event? And that's where I kind of would go back and say, maybe an event is not what your team should do right now. Maybe a campaign such as Drive to Ride or Horse of the Year, or I just saw a program is doing a salsa competition.
I want to be a judge for that.
Me
Oh my
too.
gosh.
I'm like, how fun is that? Like
Yeah.
that would be a great add on to like the Horse of the Year race or something else,
Ooh, or it's going to be chilly season here in
Yes.
Nebraska pretty soon.
Yes.
We all have hoodies on right now.
Yes.
listeners,
Yeah, so
just
maybe
you know.
maybe that's a great Drive to Ride. See here, we're brainstorming,
Yes.
and all of a sudden,
And
things
now all of
start.
our listeners are in a development meeting. Welcome.
But that's how things happen, and ideas develop, and you continue on, and it gets exciting, and people are like, oh yeah, I'm really motivated, and I'll do that, and then all of a sudden you have a whole new thing. So I think keep your eyes open.
It's Katie popping in, and I have Edie Godden here. She's CEO and occupational therapist at Hetra. Edie, you're here to tell us about an exciting new program that Hetra has. Tell us about the consulting program.
Yeah, thank you. So at Hetra, we have decided as a team that we would like to offer our services out to others in the equine assisted services community on various topics. So we get a lot of questions on how we manage our horses, to volunteers, to fundraising, from other programs across the United States. And we wanted to have an opportunity to really be able to share that.
What makes us so qualified to share that information with people?
Some of us in the organization, me, have over 30 years of experience and have seen, or we have taken our organization from a very small all-volunteer organization to one that is, a very large organization with 13 full-time employees and 150 people we see a week. And so we have an amazing team of individuals everywhere, from our horse manager to our volunteer coordinators to our therapists and our instructors that work in the arena. So I think we have a lot of expertise, and we really feel like it would have been way easier 30 years ago to be able to pick somebody's brain than to try to recreate the wheel.
And I think that's why it's so important that we offer this service, right? Is to help others.
Absolutely. I think others throughout the United States are trying to get programs started. We know how beneficial these programs are to individuals. We also know how incredibly difficult it is. I think people get into programs like this with their heart in the right place, but not understanding all the different aspects. And then maybe they don't keep things going.
Yeah, so we're here to help them all keep going so that we can make the biggest impact with our services we can, right?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, if you're interested in learning more about our consulting program, check out hetrauniversity.org. I will also drop the link in the show notes below. And the cool part is that we offer a free 15-minute consultation. So you can fill out the survey. We'll link you with someone that matches the needs and questions that you have. We'll complete that 15-minute consultation, and then from there, we can offer packages customized to what your needs are.
Does it work really well?
Absolutely. Okay, well, we're getting close on time, and I want to wrap up with something today that's a little bit different, but very, very special. And we touched on it a little bit when we were talking about campaigns. Edie, you explained it just a little bit, but I want to dive in just a little and set up our listeners, because we are about to launch Drive to Ride. Very important campaign for us, and it's where our families help drive for funds so that they can earn free sessions and free lessons through our program. But listeners, you're going to start to hear bonus episodes from the families that are enrolled in our Drive to Ride program. So those are actual families that are, driving for funds, but really the point of sharing their story is just to share their story and their impact and how horses have helped them, and how, I have to say it, we are so much more than just a pony ride. So you are going to hear some of those families speaking in the coming weeks from October clear through December, right? Or through the end of the year. So tell us just a little bit more about Drive to Ride and why we started that campaign.
So it is a campaign that is directly for the participants, as you said, and it's a way to get the impact stories out there. So the impact, what horses have meant to these families, what Hetra has meant to these families, and also to tell their stories, because we just had one for Blue Jeans, Paxton's stories, extremely moving to hear what his family has had, how they've processed through the whole journey for them, and to share that with us, it was quite moving. And so to give these families an opportunity to share their story so others can learn, what does a typical day look like for them? What are the things that are challenges for them? And what are the victories, or what are the things that happen that really excite them. So that's part of the reason. Obviously, it is a fundraising campaign. It's a way that we bring in funds for the program. And we really felt like it was a nice way to, again, not have another event, but really be able to focus on our participants and the difference being made. And so not only are they raising funds, but others in the community are looking at those stories and say, you know what, that really resonates with me, and I'm going to support that team. So we see that, where those stories are shared, and the family may get funding from people they don't even know, because that story really resonates with them. And so I think it just helps spread the word about Hetra, as well as bring in, much needed funds for the participant sponsorship program.
Yeah. So she talked a little bit about Paxton's family and the story that they shared. And that was actually for our, we displayed that video at our Blue Jeans and Dreams event. And it was absolutely wonderful. I will share it on our private Facebook group called Not Just a Pony Ride. If you guys aren't a member of that yet, please go out, search it on Facebook, and request to join. There, we share a lot of educational content, stuff that's related to the podcast, and a lot more. And I will share that video there because it was absolutely wonderful. And you can expect a lot more of those same types of stories from our families going forward. Definitely. But Angie, what else do you have to add about Drive to Ride and the impact that it has?
I think the one thing is, a lot of times people are scared to share their story, possibly to their coworkers or, friends. And this is a great opportunity for them to do it in a safe way, where they're not having to go directly to them and be like, listen, I'm struggling, I need help, where this is a way they can do that. And then other families that are just starting that journey, to see they're not alone and they have these other families that can support them, and there's a great organization like Hetra that can support them, is a huge load off their shoulders. Like, just knowing they're not alone is huge. And this is a great way to do that. And I think that for these teams that are, raising the money, that people are going to donate to them that they don't know, or family members that have never supported them in the past. Mm-hmm. Now, that really, that keeps them going. It keeps them, feeling good about what they have going on. So
yeah, it means a lot to those families for sure.
And it opens up an avenue, because, I'm not going to go directly ask you, will you give me $10 to help support my kiddo? But mm-hmm. I'm going to say, hey, will you help Hetra through the Drive to Ride campaign? And I've shared my story, and, maybe that family member does donate $10 or $15 or $20 mm-hmm. or $50, and that goes. So it gives that avenue where it's not necessarily a direct ask, mm-hmm. but it's out there, and it gives away. And I think from a family perspective, or at least for me, when people show that kind of support, that's really moving. And it's really cool to see that not only are my friends and family supporting me, but others in the community are supporting me. I think that's really cool.
Yeah. And there's not a set amount they have to donate. Right. If they can only afford $5 and they donate $5, that's fantastic. That's helping them, mm-hmm. And I think that's really great when you're putting it out there and letting people feel great about helping others, and it doesn't matter the amount they donate. That's really great too,
And they can do it anonymously or not. And it's really, there's lots of options when it comes to that.
And a lot of times when you talk about those $5 donations, those mean a ton to me, because a lot of times those are from individuals that that may be a stretch for them to do right now, but they still feel like it's important to support. And so they give you that. They're giving you that $5. That's pretty cool.
And if 20 people donate $5, that compounds for sure.
Absolutely.
Yes.
All right. Well, we're going to wrap up here today. Thank you so much, both of you, for joining me. I know this was a huge can of worms that a lot of our listeners, I think, wanted to hear about, is how we support our mission and how we fund that. So I appreciate you guys sitting down with me today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, guys, we're back. I apologize. If you've listened to one of my podcasts, you know that I always have to ask this question, and I need to know. Angie, you can either tell me about your kindred spirit, or if you have a heart horse or a heart animal.
So I actually have both. So
both.
The minis here at Hedra just give me ultimate joy. The way they go out and into our community and make these little kiddos, like the smiles on their faces, there's nothing better. And then
for me, it's the clip clops when they come down the hallway. Like if I could bottle up that tiny little clip clop noise when they walk down the hallway, I would, and I could just like listen to it when I'm sad. That would be the best.
And they're so little and they just have this huge presence. Like it's just amazing. And then little different, but red pandas. So
I don't even know what that is.
Oh, my son is obsessed with red pandas. And again, the joy it gives him when he sees a red panda, like his whole face lights up, and there's nothing better to me. And they are the cutest little fluffy animals.
They're just like a regular panda, except they're red.
No, you have to look them up. They're very cute.
Googling it now. Okay. Edie, spirit animal. You've told us about your heart horse. We've had you on the podcast before. Yeah. Always enjoy those stories. But I need to know, what is your kindred spirit?
Yeah. So good question. And I'd say my kindred spirit is a red mare. So for all those horse people out there, they will appreciate that. A red mare, a chestnut mare, they have a bit of fire in their bellies. They are opinionated. They have a mission. But typically, if you can get those red mares to partner with you, if you can, and it's partnership, it's not
earn their respect.
You can go so far. They will give you their full heart. And so I would say a red mare, that's my kindred spirit.
Spot on, both of you. Thank you, audience, for sticking around for those last few minutes. If you didn't, tell a friend, because they got to come back and listen to it. All right. Thank you. This podcast is presented by Hetra University, an educational arm of the Heartland Equine Therapeutic Riding Academy. Hetra University's mission is to provide high-quality educational offerings to our participants and the equine-assisted services community. Craving more content like this? We invite you to check out our series of webinars and much, much more over at hetrauniversity.org. If you'd like to help us work toward our mission, you can make a donation by clicking on the link in the show notes below or visit us at hetra.org. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Again, my biggest thanks to you all for helping Hetra change lives one stride at a time.